day. Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 118. We're moving swiftly along right now, and I am your host, Nathan Springer. It is the 10th of August, 2022, and it's a pleasure being here. And today, as per usual, for the last couple nights, tonight is brought to you by my sponsors over there at SM Associates, S.M. Associates. If you are on TikTok, it's SM Associates. No, SM Resources. My bad. On TikTok, SM Resources. And they are Study Monkey over on Facebook. Study with 2 E's, Study Monkey and Associates over on Facebook. They are the sponsors of the lovely charts you see behind me there. Allegedly, CXC results were supposed to drop today. Well, I usually teach most years I teach and do some lessons, but this last year I did no CXC classes, so I have no real vested interest in this year's CXC personally. Of course, I'd like to see my fellow Trinidadian students do well. But the charts are brought to you by Study Monkey. Study with 2 E's over there on Facebook, Study Monkey and Associates. You can head over there and get your charts, local charts with local topics, local information, really niched for our market and priced very reasonably. So yeah, head over to Study Monkey. They sponsored these charts and they're good folks, followers of the Mindful Live. Glad to have you here tonight. And tonight, as I said before, I'm looking, our Twin Isle Republic is Trinidad and Tobago. It's not just Trinidad, it's Trinidad and Tobago. So we're looking to, make sure we speak about Tobago and make sure Tobago gets its fair hearing. Now, it could nearly seem like the way some things are headed these days, like Tobago isn't too much interested in that and with Trinidad much these days. Tobago, well, the party that is now in charge of the Tobago House of Assembly, their leader during the campaigning phase said several things pretty clear where he had no interest in being close to Trinidad and to Trinidad. He didn't want that two-way partnership business, but when they won, that basically changed. It's not like they're looking to secede per se. But there have been some interesting topics coming out of Tobago as the new PDP is in power now. There are some questions that are being asked of them, some hard questions that they seem to be unable to answer for some strange reason. One of the prominent figures, he is a regular. He is a regular on several news programs, a regular contributor, and he is a friend of the PDP, and there has been some strange actions going on with this. Allegedly, well, that's not even allegedly. Initially, there was some talk about him being placed on a board in charge of a certain state company over in Tobago, and the strange thing is his brother is the direct line secretary in charge of that board. And not saying that for sure there's something improper going on there, but I mean, it could seem a little strange if your brother is the line secretary in the Tobago House of Assembly in charge of a certain thing, and then you are the chairman, I believe, of the board of a company under that secretary. Things start to look a little strange. And when confronted about it, the chief secretary said they're going to investigate this matter, that this matter would be investigated. Thank you, sir, Mr. Nobody Care About Man. I can't remember the incident, but I enjoy you in the live. Once everything is respectful and stuff and everyone gets to talk, we go on well. Yeah. So the Tobago leadership, the PDP, they said they would investigate this matter. Now, I am someone who generally looks at the news every day. I look all about at the news on different websites, different newspapers. I am curious like that. But I saw nothing about this investigation. I don't know what is the outcome of this investigation. And I would kind of like to know, is this public intellectual still being paid to run a board while being placed under his brother, who is the line secretary for it. That seems a bit strange. And I remember the PDP, when they were criticizing the PNM, who was in charge of Tobago before, who was in charge of Tobago for what, like 20 years nearly? They were in charge for quite some time. When the PDP was criticizing the PNM about their actions, one of the things they were talking about is that same kind of nepotism. And I kind of agree. I find regularly when you look at some of the actions of the PNM, the People's National Movement, you do see more than the fair share of nepotism. More nepotism than would be needed. And I agree with that. That's a fair criticism of the People's National Movement. But then the PDP came in to replace, and you know, they came in on the banners of change. They are going to change, bring a new way to run this country, being Tobago. But strangely, it seems kind of the same kind of nepotism business. This guy is already an elderly gentleman. You know, the PDP spoke about giving the youth chances. I remember Mr. Augustine, the last time I spoke about Tobago, I remember Mr. Augustine came out with a statement. He said that he believes the old people should go home and mind their grandchildren. That's what Mr. Augustine said, the Tobago Chief Secretary. The old people should leave the jobs for the younger and go home and mind their grandchildren. But how could you say something like that while at the same time employing someone who I am pretty sure is over the age of pension and employing him already in what may seem like a nepotistic role? That doesn't make sense. And then imagine my consternation when the other day I'm scrolling Facebook. You know, you're just dull scrolling the Facebook. They're doing nothing with your time sometimes. And what would I stumble upon? A little article snippet there from Liz Williams out in Tobago, a reporter, a journalist in Tobago. And she had the picture. The picture of an invoice. An invoice for $25,000. I was like, okay, interesting. And on the invoice, there was a signature. The signatory on the invoice was the same elderly gentleman, the same public intellectual who already had the seemingly nepotistic placement on the board. He sent in an invoice for $25,000 for reviewing and editing the budget. And you have to wonder, there are finance secretaries out in Tobago. There's a finance secretary in Tobago, and he is not that. The finance secretary has an office with workers in it, and he isn't employed there as far as I know. So why is he paid $25,000 to edit the budget, the Tobago budget? What is that? What are we doing? What are we talking about here? And when he was asked about it, he didn't deny that he did get that money. He said that's a private document and he wouldn't comment on such things. You know, that's a private document. I will not comment on such things. What is this? How is this any different from many of the allegations that the PDP were leveling against the PNM back then? That they're so nepotistic, that they're only paying their friends, and there's a whole cloud around the payment systems and where the money goes to and who the money goes to, etc., etc. And great, that's a great complaint. Fine enough. But then you come into the place and at least you're seeming to do the same thing. Like, what are we doing here? What are we really doing here over in Tobago? What's going on, Tobago? I would really like to know that. What's going on over there in Tobago? Now, that's not the only issue. That's just the precursor. That's the introduction to it. There has been recently some back and forth between several Tobago officials and Caribbean Airlines over some discrepancies. Only when a party not in government, they did know what wrong. That's a very good point, Richard Glubman. All the opposition parties and all the aspirants to power, they know how to run a country. They know when there's corruption and nepotism and when things are horrible. I know the United National Congress, they raised the issue of Mr. Al-Rawi's buildings, and we know that. I regularly speak about that because I don't think it's something that should come out of the public consciousness. The fact that our government is paying the former Attorney General, a minister, a member of cabinet, several $1 million for buildings that aren't even fully utilized. And the UNC regularly brings that up. Good night, easy 868. We on the inside. Yes, you are. Yes, you are on the inside. And the UNC regularly brings this up. But I also recall, because my memory hasn't been cut short, I recall back in the 2010 to 2015 period, there were some allegations about some buildings that were being used that were known to be belonging to some relatives of certain high-ranking members of the UNC. And all of a sudden, they changed from recognizing how horrible that was, and now they do the same thing. That's why I regularly tell people, stop putting your hopes in these politicians. Stop putting your hope in these politicians, because these are people. These are people, and these are people that are corruptible. They reach into these places, and you hope that they're going to do just what you want them to do. This is going to be the new different thing. No, they're people, and very likely they're going to do what most people generally do. And that's why usually I say, if I have to push for some kind of political strategy, some political ideology, what I'm generally more inclined to push for is just less power to the politicians, because you start to recognize that they do what they do because they have the power to do what they do. So maybe a lot of the solution may come from just removing some of that power. All right. Let's head over to an article there to see how this story unfolded between the PDP and Caribbean Airlines and what it entails. As usual, as I said before, the charts are sponsored by SM Resources over here on TikTok. You can check them out, s.m.resources, or on Facebook you can check out Study Monkey and Associates, study with 2 E's. They're the sponsors of the charts. Hit them up, buy out some charts. The charts are good stuff. Educational, good information. Have a child, have a class to teach, good stuff. All right. Augustine calling for more domestic flights to Tobago. Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Farley Augustine, is urging Tobagonians who sit in the cabinet to stand up and advocate for Caribbean Airlines Limited, CAL, to increase domestic flights to Tobago. The issue is being raised as the THA moves to extend the opening hours of the A&R Robinson Airport to 2 a.m. On our THA, this is the Chief Secretary speaking here, on our THA end, I am clearing the way. For heaven's sake, increase the number of flights, he said on Tuesday. So, this story is from August the 4th. That's about a week ago. It's been something that has been developing. Good night, Ria. What's up? What's up? Good night. Good night. Good night, Licorice. What's your opinion about spending his own money to fix some issues and highlight? I like that. I am glad for that. I endorse that. Good for him. Does that necessarily mean he would automatically be the best choice to run the government? May not be. And he isn't the first or only person to do that. There have been other individuals who have done likewise. There are actually many people in and around Trinidad and Tobago that take out of their own pockets to solve certain issues. Some of them don't make as big an issue, as big a highlight about it. Some do, and that's up to you, but it happens. For example, I'm from the Central area. I live in Central. Good place to live, good place to find people, good people in Central. And I know for a fact that, for example, this grocery price club, they regularly fixed, at least past tense, fixed some of the bridges through some of the back roads and did some patchwork on some of the roads, etc. You would see their crews out there doing it. So yes, people do that, and it's a good thing. I applaud him for such. But yeah, Mr. Augustine is calling for more flights. According to him, for heaven's sake, increase the number of flights. The A&R Robinson Airport currently opens until 10 p.m. daily, unlike Piarco International Airport, which operates on a 24-hour basis. Augustine has noted in the past that opening the Tobago Airport until 2 a.m. required $5.6 million annually, $600 US per hour, and the THA had agreed to foot this bill. So the THA is willing to, put in the money, put the money of the THA where their mouth is, and they're going to make sure that the Tobago Airport opens for a longer period of time. But whether the airport opens all night, it's kind of up to the airlines to actually bring people in. So while they're talking about opening the airport for a longer period of time, they're also at the same time pleading with the Caribbean Airlines and the authorities who might have a say in that. Please send more flights. Cabinet must take responsibility. Augustine said he spoke to the chief executive officer of CAL, Gavin Madeira, 2 weeks ago on the matter. There are some issues that they're trying to iron out in terms of staffing, availability of planes, and so on. I intend to write him this week seeking an audience, he stated. Augustine went on to make it clear that he was not attacking the managers of CAL, as he knew the airline was under the purview of the cabinet. The cabinet sets the mandate for Caribbean Airlines. In that cabinet, we have at least one Tobagonian down there. We have a junior minister of, who's another Tobagonian. So we have one minister that's there in the cabinet. We have a prime minister. And I'm saying that the cabinet has to take responsibility and instruct the minister of finance or whoever is in cooperation sole with regards to Caribbean Airlines to have this thing done. Now, I disagree that just because there are Tobagonians in the cabinet that it should have some kind of special treatment to Tobago. That's not how it should run. They're in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. They're supposed to be looking to run the country on a level basis. They're not there to represent Tobago. The MPs for Tobago are there to represent Tobago. The Prime Minister, although he is originally from Tobago, he is representing Trinidad and Tobago, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, I really like the idea that there are so many Tobagonians inside of the cabinet. It's really symbolic of what the cabinet is supposed to be. It's supposed to be representative of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Grand. But just because they are originally from Tobago doesn't mean that they are automatically going to lean more favorably to Tobago issues. That's like saying that if a cabinet minister is from Chaguanas, that they're supposed to lean more heavily on Chaguanas. Roly Poly the only is asking, when is the Tobago Carnival? We are going to talk about that. Shy Panda also asked, they feel these planes running on magic. Well, therein is the problem, sir. Because Caribbean Airlines replied 5 days ago. Caribbean Airlines outlines losses, high costs of flying Airbridge. Caribbean Airlines has said that the high cost of flying between Trinidad and Tobago and the subsidized ticket prices are factors in the number of flights on the Airbridge, but says it's committed to ensuring that it continues as an essential service. In a statement on Thursday, the airline said the provision of a safe and reliable Airbridge service is a priority for Caribbean Airlines and that the company recognizes that it is a critical part of the transport service between Trinidad and Tobago. However, there are several factors that must be considered when looking at the airline's commercial operations, both international and domestic, it said. The airline pointed out that its fleet comprises 7 ATR and 9 Boeing 737 or 8 aircraft, and that on average about 3 to 4 ATRs operate the Airbridge at any given time. Further, it noted that each Wednesday and Thursday a 737-8 operates to or from JFK via Tobago, providing an additional 160 seats each way. It said other jet services are added on an ad hoc basis and that the jets are not routinely used on the route due to the high operational costs and the given short distance. Since the reopening of Trinidad and Tobago's borders in July 2021, the airline has consistently increased domestic flights and added airlift operationally within the limits of its resources. Now, here are some of the problems. My concern is this: 40K loss on each flight. That's what we're going to get to here, roly-poly. Subsidized costs. It is important to note that the domestic operation is characterized by consistent losses and other critical variables, but not limited to subsidized flights, high operating costs, which is USD $17,000 and change US per flight hour, low prices which do not reflect actual market value, one-way peak demand periods outside of the July-August school holiday period. You understand what that one-way peak means? It means that at a given time, usually it's one way has most people, and the return flight has fewer people. You'd be returning with a partially empty flight. That makes things difficult. They broke down the cost. Ramesh Lachmidial, each Tobago flight loses $40,800. Each CAL flight between Tobago and Trinidad loses at least. So bear in mind, this isn't the actual shore cost they lose. This is at least $40,800, even if it is filled. Ramesh Lachmidial, retired Director General of Civil Aviation, claimed in a statement on Monday, saying the Tobago Business Chamber blamed the Airbridge for CAL's losses. He said while the Tobago House of Assembly has called for more flights, CAL has consistently lost millions of dollars. CAL and its predecessor BWIA rarely achieved profitability throughout their existence, requiring taxpayers' support to the tune of billions of dollars to remain airborne. So what happens here is now you have to take money. You have to take money from the coffers, from the taxpayers' coffers, money that you know when we complain about the government bad spending money, we recognize how well it could be spent. Money that could have been spent to pave the road, money that could have been spent to buy a hospital bed, money that could have been spent to pay more nurses, money that could have been spent to increase the pay of public servants, even possibly. They must find that money and give it to Caribbean Airlines to be able to run this flight, because it's losing $40,800. Not the flight costs $40,800. It's losing. Lachmidial said while stakeholders like the Chamber, THA, and hoteliers have a right to clamor for more flights, serious underlying issues must be tackled. The airline industry is extraordinarily complex and requires lots of cash to meet capital and operating expenses. For every route, airlines determine the cost to produce a seat on the flight and the realistic passenger loads at which the revenues generated meet the cost of operating the flight. This is known as the break-even load factor, and loads in excess of the break-even load factors realize operating profits. So, if I was in charge, is one flight per day, Richard Glubman says, Sir, careful. Good night, Akim Thomas over there on Instagram. Thank you. Good night to you and your family too. So, it's a loss. He said the Airbridge does not afford passengers the luxury of showing up at the airport at any time to board a flight. And listen, I would have loved that. I like Tobago. I really like Tobago, you know. I like my country. I like all about my country. And Tobago is part of my country. I don't care if some people think that Tobago is somehow not part of Trinidad and Tobago. I am a Trinbagonian. Tobago is my country too. Hey, good night, Lee forever board. And I really like Tobago. I would have really enjoyed if I could have turned up to the airport like a taxi and whenever I wanted at any given hour and just hop on a flight and go over to Tobago. That would be so convenient. I would have been in Tobago much more regularly, but I understand how reality operates, that you know, in reality, these things cost money. Airline flight schedules are structured based on passenger demand, travel patterns, and convenient travel times to achieve the optimum load factors. So, maybe they know that generally speaking, over a given weekend, maybe let's say 300 people want to leave Trinidad to go to Tobago. Well, they would want to set it at a certain time so that two planes carrying 150 per se each, 160, two planes can leave with a full trip and carry all of those people. So they need to set those two flights at the optimum time. Now, it would have been more convenient if there could have been 500 different flights for each, well, no, 300 different flights for each individual to leave at their own given time. If the airline service could have run like a Uber. You know, you call your Uber airline and you jump on and you go over to Tobago whenever you're ready. That would have been beautiful. But it's not realistic. You have to schedule these things for optimum profit. You do not want to just be losing money. There's a limited amount of money. I think we should understand this by now. Further, on the domestic Airbridge, demand is not always constant or balanced. Demand is directional on certain days, such as Fridays to Tobago and Sundays to Trinidad. Now, should it be that if the flight demand is highest on Friday and highest to Tobago on Friday and highest from Tobago on Sunday, that you would understand that when the flight goes over to Tobago on Friday, if they're returning to Trinidad, they would be returning with much fewer people on the flight. And just by the way, if when the flight is filled to the maximum, it loses $40,800. When the flight is not filled, I mean, we could fill in the rest there. This means that on the return leg, the load factors can be low with lots of empty seats. A critical point to note is that airline seats are uniquely perishable products. Lachmidial argued that the government has a public service duty to provide air transport linkages to support social and economic activities in Tobago. Most passengers who are domiciled in Tobago and use the Airbridge for essential travel may not be able to afford the full economic fare. Therefore, the solution may well lie in a two-tier fare system, a subsidized fare for Tobago residents and an economic fare for non-residents. That's part of his idea. I could understand the idea because what he's saying is that because of the twin island nature of our republic, there are people in Tobago who may be seeking essential services in Trinidad. And if it is that let's say the actual cost of the flight is something like $700, for them to do that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis might just be unaffordable. So it's very difficult if you're talking about a government trying to see about people's essential needs. It's difficult to try and say that the government should allow CAL to raise these prices to that level and squeeze some of these people out of the essential needs and the needs that are created because of the twin island structure of our country. That could be a bit hard and harsh. The proposal that this former civil aviation director has is that you have a two-tiered system where you subsidize for the residents and any non-resident has to pay the full fare. Now, I kind of wonder, when he says non-resident, if he's meaning non-resident of Tobago itself, so that would pertain to Trinidadians. And personally, as a Trini, I don't want to pay the real fare either. And I could see that it may make a bit of a grouse if Tobagonians could pay a cheaper fare than Trinidadians. So that may be strange, but if he's talking about in terms of Trinbagonians pay the subsidized fare, but any non-Trini, if you're from any other country, you pay the real fare, then I'm okay with that, to be very honest. But even in that, you have to question, would that have a chill effect or a chilling effect on Tobago's tourism? And Tobago is an island that does depend to a good extent on tourism. And if you do that, would it have a chilling effect on the tourism? What would be the cost benefit in something like that? How much more money would Caribbean Airlines be able to make? And would it cause Tobago in general to make less money for it? Comparing how much less you make in tourism with how much more Caribbean Airlines may be able to make. Ria says, Nathan, nah, it is one country, Trinidad and Tobago. Why Tobago residents have a different cost? I agree with that, just by the way. This was the proposal by a former director of civil aviation. Government subsidy does not cover shortfall. So this is a breakdown of the cost here. He said in 2017, a CAL official told the Parliamentary Select Committee the present Airbridge airfare of $300 had been fixed for 10 years and did not cover the $600 to $700 operating costs, even with a $100 government subsidy. Lach Medial estimated that today, based on current fuel prices, the cost of providing a return passenger seat on the Airbridge using an ATR 72 aircraft is about $1,000. Would you pay $1,000 for a flight to Tobago? Would you pay $1,000 for that return flight? Because that's the market cost. With a $400 revenue for a trip, because the price right now is $300, the government gives a subsidy of $100, so Caribbean Airlines gets $400 per seat per trip. This results in an operating deficit of $600 per return seat and $40,800 per return flight using a 68-seater ATR 72-600 aircraft. Even if Airbridge flights are operated at 100% load factors, the revenue earned by airfare and subsidy is well below the economic cost of providing the service. That's the reality. And the thing is, that's the reality in many areas in Trinidad and Tobago. Marlon Beckles says, if I'm not mistaken, I think Cal is planning to buy an airplane value at $600 million. One airplane for $600 million. Are you sure? I haven't heard that. I understand Caribbean Airlines operating at a deficit, but $1,000 is a negative. I kind of agree too. I don't mind the subsidized cost. And here's the thing. If we have the government structure that we do have, where they do take taxes, they take VAT, they take pay as you earn. The government has state-owned companies where they get money from. They take lots of money from several corporations. If you run a business, you pay quite a bit of taxes. You're paying taxes. And I do not mind that the government uses some of their resources to subsidize something like this. I don't mind that. As in, it's like the entire country comes together to make sure that everyone could get a cheaper flight between Tobago and Trinidad. I don't think that's a bad use of our finances. I do not. But I think we have to be sensible with it. I think we have to be sensible about it. That we need to know what would be too much in such a case. Knowing that this is a thing that is costing us more than it is supposed to as a country, what would be the sensible amount that we'll be content with? Now, Augustine, let's work out the Airbridge arithmetic. He responded. This is an article from today. THA's Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine, has called for discussions with Caribbean Airlines to work out the arithmetic, as he described the domestic Airbridge as an essential service. 1 week ago, Cal, in a media release, we know what they said and we know what Mr. Lach Medial said. He said Cal and its predecessor hardly achieved profitability. We know that. Speaking on Tobago's Channel 5, Augustine said the service between Trinidad and Tobago must be seen as an essential service. Essential public services are not provided for profit. They are provided for necessity, first and foremost. Public transportation connecting the two islands must be seen as essential public service. The service Caribbean Airlines is providing must be seen as a public transportation service, which is an essential public service. For $1,000, can I just use a pirogue instead? Now, probably to me, I think the airfare could raise more than $300, to be honest. I am not saying I want it to, but I'm saying it can. I'm saying it can, especially knowing that there's an alternative that is much cheaper. Not the whole $1,000, but a little more to, at least drop the margins a bit. So here's a wonder. Here's a wonder. As Mr. Farley Augustine is saying, they're working out the arithmetic. Working out the arithmetic. So here's the suggestion. If it is that we raise the fare by $200 to $500, and then we raise the amount of flights. So they would, as a whole, Caribbean Airlines they will still lose some money, but it would be around the same amount they were losing anyhow. So we get a little more flights with a little more cost. Would we be willing for that sacrifice? I wonder if the Tobago House of Assembly would be okay with that. He said a dialogue must be had on the issue. If Caribbean Airlines know they want to raise the fare, if they know they want to do something else to make some more money, they should come clean. Be honest, and let's have an honest discussion. But what it takes to have an efficient inter-island airplane service. But the island cannot remain disconnected. Say what you need to say to us. If you're saying $300 it's not doable, you need to add $100. Let's work out the arithmetic. He added the fact that the minority has remained silent on it. Right, that's politics. So he is saying that maybe they would be okay with that. I wonder. And even in something like this, as a business, you have to wonder about it. If you increase the cost by $100 or $200, would that have the same demand? Would you have the same demand for the flights if you increase the cost? And if you increase the cost, and now you're able to do more flights, but then if the demand decreases a bit, would it make sense to do more flights with less demand? Is the subsidy applied to foreign citizens? Yes, I believe it is. And that's part of what Mr. Lachmidial said in his article, where I believe he was referring to non-residents of Trinidad and Tobago. I hope. So if you're a non-resident, I find you could pay the full $1,000 personally. If you're a non-resident, pay the full fare. Outside with that. But on the topic of it being an essential service being that the government must ensure that they push this through. Elasticity of demand. Ooh, we have some economists inside. Build a land bridge, let people drive. Well, I've heard about that so many times. The idea to build that bridge from Tobago out there to Crown Point. I would love if that could happen. And there are bridges that length in the world. One of the problems is, though, that the waters out on the East Coast are open waters. That's waters coming from the Atlantic Ocean. As you can see in my map here, map supplied by Study Monkey. Yes. The maps are supplied by Study Monkey. Study with 2 E's if you're looking for them on Facebook. Study Monkey and Associates. As you can see on my map, that Atlantic Ocean is the one that bridges Tobago over there. And that Atlantic Ocean is open ocean. If you look at, well, I don't have the world map up there, but if you look at a world map, that's open ocean. And that's a bit more difficult to build in, just so you know. Rougher waters, open seas. Yes. Return fares we're talking about. Not one way. Wow, no, not one way. I also agree with non-residents paying the full fare, Massimo says over on Instagram. But yeah, if this is an essential service, as the Tobago Chief Secretary says, how far can we take this reasoning? How far can you take the reasoning that public transport is an essential service that the government must supply and it must be affordable? How far can we take that reasoning? Is the government to supply transport for every citizen, and any citizen unable to get public transport could sue the government for not supplying that public service? Is that how far we can take it? To me, I understand that public transport, at least mass transport, does help greatly. It does help greatly. And the government subsidizing it may pay back in spades in another area. True. But how far can we take that reasoning, seeing that $40,800 are lost on each flight? Hey, you see why Tobago want autonomy? Well, here's the thing, Ria. Here's the thing. As I've said many times before, Tobago's income is somewhere around $200 million. And Tobago spends, well, this year, I believe the request, what was the request? 4 point something billion. So that autonomy talk dead in the water. They don't have the resources for that. And that's not a dig at Tobago. That's not an insult. That's like me saying that I don't think that Moruga has the resources to become autonomous. Moruga cannot become autonomous on their own. They take more resources than they put in. There are many places around the country similar. Because how we could be saying that the government not supposed to provide a way from one island to the next. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. And either way, like even in my political belief, I don't think that's the government's responsibility. What do you mean the government is supposed to provide a way? Personally, I don't believe the government is supposed to. That's something we can negotiate into what we want our government to do, but that's not something our government is supposed to do necessarily. That's like saying the government is supposed to provide a way for you to reach the Port of Spain. They aren't supposed to do that. If you want to go to Port of Spain, you pay. You jump in your car and go. It's your responsibility. How is it anyone else's responsibility where you go and how you get where you get? I don't understand that. Like, our problem is we want a daddy government. In Trinidad and Tobago, that's one of the main problems. That's one of my main grouses in Trinidad and Tobago, you know. We love the daddy government. We want daddy to supply everything. We find daddy supposed to give us this. Daddy's supposed to make sure we get food to eat. Daddy's supposed to make sure we get a house. Daddy's supposed to, and daddy's supposed to, and daddy's supposed to give us a job. Well, then if you want daddy to do that, then daddy gets to control your life too. That's how that goes. If daddy gives you everything, daddy controls your life. For people who grew up in families, that's how it goes. As long as you're living in my house, you follow my rules. The more you want the government to supply for you, the more you are under the control of the government. If it's one country but 2 islands, shouldn't the government have things in place for citizens to go and come? Yes, in the nature of how our island is set up, they already do. There are airports, there are seaports. And you move. If you want to promote Arimamas, how do we promote success? I'm not sure. Domestic example here. I'm not fully sure what you're asking there, roly-poly. No one should be homeless and no one should ever not have basic health. Well, I don't even agree in that. I don't think that, and I know some people wouldn't agree, but I don't think that health is a right. Because healthcare, here's the thing, healthcare is someone else's labor. A doctor has to work to give you healthcare. You are not entitled to anyone else's labor. Now, as a country, we could develop a social contract where we decide to pay for everyone's basic health care. We can do that because we decide to. And as we get more resources, we could expand that. Great. That's something that we can discuss. That's something that we can discuss. We can expand it even wider as we get more and more money. But I don't believe that it's, as it were, as some people put it, a human right. That's not how that works. Not no. And as we know already. But if you work for your healthcare in the future, well, I agree with that. You can work. There's basic healthcare and then there's the unnecessary. Listen, basic healthcare still requires someone else's labor. You're never entitled to someone else's labor. If you want someone else's labor, you got to pay them for it. That's good law. That's good human rights. That's good human interactions and human relationships. Now, as a society, right, yeah, I agree, Kaspadri. I agree, that's what I was coming to say. As a society, And as we become more wealthy as a society, we can discuss opening up new avenues to create new opportunities for people. By all means, the taxes from the working class help to provide for the non-working or less fortunate. And I don't mind that. I don't mind the social safety net by and large, even though it gets abused. But by and large, I don't mind that. But still, I don't think that is a human right. Those things aren't human rights. If the country begins to lose money for some reason, if the country is no longer as wealthy, those are things that will be stripped back. Those are things that will be dialed back. It's like some people believe that it's their right to have subsidized gas. Would you throw your granddad on the street if he needed healthcare but didn't work for it? No, by no means. And I usually say this, as you say granddad. When it comes to that whole communist socialist kind of business, you're a communist with your family. You are. I will willingly give to my immediate family, even if they didn't work for it. I worked for something and I'll give it to my immediate family. You're a communist with your immediate family. You're a socialist with your community. You're a socialist with your community. People in my community will put money together to help people, etc. We're socialists. But the wider we go out, the wider the community or society we're talking about, the more free market I would rather. The more I know. I said that. Communist with your immediate family, socialist with your community. And as you go out to countrywide, I much rather a free market. I much rather a free market, because the wider it goes, you always end up with the problem of freeloaders. Now, I don't want to get into the whole communist versus free market business right now, but that's the general way I view it. As we expand in society, we get a freer and freer market with less power of one person over the other. I do not want it to be on a countrywide basis that I must give of my resources to supply someone else who may decide that they don't want to work for it. Now, in a family, that's okay. It's a communist family, a socialist community, and a free market country. That's my view. Sure, I don't necessarily see it as good, but as a questionably necessary evil. All right. So even in Trinidad, as we speak about what is essential service and what is a right, we do supply this. The reality is even all these discussions that go further are already supplied here in Trinidad and Tobago. We're already subsidizing this thing. And the reality is, they're saying the government is giving $100 subsidy. No, the government is really giving a $700 subsidy. You pay $300 for a return flight, and the government, or all of us, the other citizens, are putting in $700 extra there. So yes, the government directly puts in $100 for the subsidy. But then when Caribbean Airlines loses millions upon millions upon millions of dollars because of the different things they do, bear in mind, I agree, it's not just the Airbridge Caribbean Airlines is losing money over. There are many different areas Caribbean Airlines loses money over, granted. But when they lose all of that money and now they need money for the day-to-day operation, where do they go for it? Government again, taxpayers again. So really and truly, the taxpayers are paying all. You're paying the $300, and then the government, the taxpayers, are subsidizing $700. If Tobago makes more income yearly, would they require less from central bank on a yearly basis? Well, I suppose. El Chrome says, if they reduce the subsidy on the Airbridge, more money for health, etc. And that's the thing. And I was a science student. I always loved sciences, but there are interesting topics in business. And as I said many times, I'm curious. I've read some. And one of the most important principles I learned way back reading someone of another student's business book back then was the principle of opportunity costs. If you have a limited resource, you have a limited number of things, you can do with that resource. Money is a limited resource. We don't have an infinite amount of money. There are limited things we can do with the money. Just as, but do you think people will go as frequent if they remove the subsidy? Well, that's what we were saying before. that's the balancing act you have to do, because if you remove the subsidy, you may cripple part of the tourism industry in Tobago, and then you may actually lose more money on in the grand scheme of things. So there's a balance. There is a balance. You want to I agree. I don't mind the subsidy, as I've said. I don't want to pay $1,000 to for a return flight to Tobago. I don't think I'll go very regularly if that's the case. But it's like if someone has $3,000 to spend on a holiday and they decide to go to Tobago. If they spend $1,000 on the flight, then they only have $2,000 to spend on the island. If they spend $300 on the flight, chances are they may still spend the $2,700 extra dollars on the island. So the profit may still be acquired. Now, that's a case. But there's a balance there. It's finding, you got to find the sweet spot. You have to find the sweet spot where the subsidy is enough to encourage maximum number of people to visit the island, while not too much to pay too much, where we're actually suffering really badly as a country. And as I was saying, with opportunity costs and limited resources, you have to decide where would be best to place these resources. And this topic came up not because they're looking to cancel the subsidy on the airline, but because the Tobago House of Assembly is requesting, near demanding, more flights to Tobago. We're already losing $40,800 per flight, and they say they want more flights. More flights. You can't develop your country when $2 trillion are siphoned undeclared through your banks. That's true. My thing is, scheduling solves the issue for both THA and Caribbean Airlines. Empress Roni, you're real late. And this is the topic just for you, Miss Tobagonian. This is the topic just for you. But yes, we're talking here about not canceling the subsidy as it exists, but the Tobago House of Assembly and the Business Chamber wants more flights. The THA wants to open the airport from 10 p.m. when it closes till 2 a.m. How many more flights per day would that be? How many more flights per day would that be? Are they talking about what? 4 more flights per day on peak days, on weekends? And would that be 4 times 40,000 more dollars lost out of the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago? And bear in mind, it's already costing $5.6 million for the year to open the airport later. Is Tobago able to show that they are worth that increased investment? Because that's really what it is. You could consider it as an increased investment. Maybe if the airport opens till 2 a.m. and you put in more flights, maybe Tobago is going to be crowded and become the new jewel of the Caribbean and become the tourism hotspot of the entire Caribbean. Maybe, who knows? But can they promise that? Can they give that assurance that we as a country may be spending a couple $100 million more per year on this Airbridge, between Trinidad and Tobago? And what would be the tangible benefit of it if something like that does happen? Now, I could understand why Tobago could be talking like that even more, because there's Carnival coming up in Tobago. Tobago is planning their own Carnival. And there seems to be some friction going on even in that. Even in the Carnival planning business, there seems to be some friction already going on. Where is this article? This Carnival, Tobago, right, Tobago team in Grenada. Now, some of the bacchanal seems to be like, Tobago doesn't seem like they want too much help from Trinidad with it. That is a big waste of time and money, Richard Glabman says. Well, let's see. Morris questions. Let's see the first part. Tobago team in Grenada to promote inaugural Carnival. A 10-member Tobago contingent is in Grenada to promote the island's inaugural Carnival scheduled for October 28th to 30th. Speaking to Grenada's MTV News GD on Wednesday, THA Assistant Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Megan Morrison, who is leading the contingent, said Tobago was invited by the CEO of Spice Mass for an exchange program. Grenada's Spice Mass is being celebrated right now. Discussing the objectives of the October Carnival, for those who are asking, October, Morrison said it is a unique experience we're trying to put out there. Apart from that, Tobago is a naturally beautiful place. We have fabulous beaches, historical sites. We are home for the oldest rainforest in the Western Hemisphere. So we are vastly becoming the event or festival island in our aim to become the greatest. Wow, that sentence does not really ring sensible to me. Let me read that again. So we are vastly becoming the event or festival island in our aim to become the greatest little island on the planet. Great for Tobago. I want Tobago to be the greatest little island on the planet too, by all means. I think there's nowhere else to be. After you leave Miami in early October, come straight to Tobago. You would have an experience of the entire island going straight into Carnival. Trinidad have the best carnival in the Caribbean/world. Why they gone there with them 10 people? Rooney, I don't know. Now, anyone in the chat, by the way, that's a Tobagonian, so she has rights to talk sharp on these issues in such a way. But I don't know why they went to Grenada per se. They said they were invited by the CEO of Spice Mass. Now, I heard an interview today where they were speaking about how many beds you have on the island, how many rooms you have on the island, and the contingent that went didn't have an answer. They said they're asking people to open their downstairs. When your children leave for college, open your downstairs and allow visitors in. Now, I don't disagree that the whole Airbnb flavor where you allow people to rent out your unused properties or your unused rooms is a good idea. I agree. But if you're going over to Grenada to promote this carnival season and the show of goodwill to build inter-island relations, if you're going over to promote this, I think an essential answer to have is how many beds are available on the island. If you're going there for that, you should have these answers on the tip of your tongue. That's my opinion. I find if that's your purpose, you should be well furnished with the information for anything regarding that. And the thing is, even if it was to build the inter-island relations, as you're saying roly-poly, as it may very well be, there was a cost to it. Morris questions $291,094 Carnival trip for 10 THA reps. Tobago House of Assembly Minority Leader Kelvin Morris has raised queries and slammed the PDP-run THA over a trip to Grenada's Carnival for a 10-member group, allegedly costing approximately $291,094. Now, I find it, this is just me, approximately, and then you put 94, like, if you were putting approximately, like, round it off to the nearest 10, that seems like a very specific number to be approximately $291,094. Like, that's kind of exact for approximately. If you're yes, Rooney, approximately $300,000. That's how I would approximate that. Approximately 300,000. How are you approximating such a very specific number? Anyway, that's just my particularities here. Why is it necessary? This is Mr. Morris speaking. Why is it necessary to send 10 people, including personal assistant, on any such mission, and worse, not inform the public until after? PDP told Tobagonians they were coming to fix things, but the only things they seem to be fixing is themselves. Okay. Morris spoke after Chief Secretary Augustine on Wednesday said a 10-member delegation from its tourism division is currently in Grenada. Morris said yesterday, yet again this PDP administration embarked on a joyride using scarce taxpayers' money, failing to inform Tobagonians despite Farley's promise that smart man behavior won't be repeated after Watson Duke's embarrassing trip to Dubai. I don't know how many of you remember that. Mr. Duke went on a trip to Dubai to, again, promote Tobago, and there were several shaky things about the trip. That's how we'd phrase that. Several shaky things about the information, when the information was given, when the money was supplied. Did they know he was supposed to go? Several things weren't totally above board on it. And Mr. Farley promised to change things back then, and now it seems something similar allegedly went on, where the 10 members flew off, already got the approximately $300,000, and then after, Mr. Augustine said, well, we sent over a 10-member team there. Is that a worthy cause? Is that enough money to pay to go to Grenada to promote something like that? This is the way to think about it to me. Is it possible that the 10-member team that went to Grenada, costing $300,000, would they be able, because of them going to Grenada, would they be able to ensure that $300,000 worth of revenue returns from Grenada for Carnival? That's the way I would look at it. Is it possible? Is it something that is very likely that when they go there, what they do is going to so greatly impact Tobago Carnival that it would be worth more than $300,000? Now, I'm not saying that's impossible. Maybe it is. Would there be $300,000 worth of business coming from Grenada to Tobago for their carnival? And if there would be more than that, would that number have been affected based on the 10-member visiting? Or would it have been possible to post a video online and tag Grenada or send one person and get the same effect? These are questions, to me, these are viable questions. These are sensible questions. Again, opportunity costs. There's a limited amount of money. There's a limited amount of money, and there are infinite different things we can do. There are infinite different things you can do. There are always other things you could spend money on. So you're trying to decide here, where is the money best spent? Is the money best spent sending 10 people to Grenada? And listen, let's be honest as humans. Let's be honest as humans. Sending 10 people over to Grenada during Spice Mass could have a feeling. There could be a feeling, according to Rooney here, the beach people wasn't happy about that trip. That's news from on the ground in Tobago. I'm in Trinidad, I don't know. But she says the beach people over in Tobago, where that beach was, weren't happy about that trip. But yes, us being Trinidadians, we're Trinis, we're Trinbagonians. We know how the thing go. You could get the feeling like, maybe, I am not accusing anyone of necessarily having improper motives, but you could get the feeling like there may be a possibility that this trip wasn't all about promoting Tobago Carnival. They went there during Spice Mass, just by the way. And I wonder, if you're invited by the CEO of Spice Mass, as they said, the CEO of Spice Mass invited them over to Grenada. Well, if you're inviting me, why am I paying? If you're inviting a special government delegation, what's the big cost? We'll see. And it's not only there. That one is correct though. They should have covered costs. Why they didn't go earlier to learn the planning? That's what to me, I'm wondering, if you're going to learn from the Grenada Spice Mass, maybe you should have gone during the planning. It could nearly seem like you went over there to enjoy the Spice Mass. Maybe, I don't know. That's a possibility. But it's not just on the Grenada trip. It's not just on the Grenada trip. They're not only being knocked on the Grenada trip by the Tobago opposition. Pan Boss knocks THA Carnival promo trip. Grenada roll out, but nothing I add. Pan Trinbago President Beverly Ramsey Moore, and bear in mind, Pan Trinbago. Marlon Beckel says, so you're telling me that they could not use Zoom or social media to promote whatever they wanted to? I'm wondering the same thing. Social media is very powerful. Very powerful. And they're yet to have a social media launch as far as I know. I am yet to really see anything on social media about the Tobago Carnival. So, you're already in Grenada in Spice Mass and you haven't even officially launched it. O'Neil Wong, what a guan? Yeah, Pan Trinbago President Beverly Ramsey Moore, and bear in mind it's Trinbago, so she is in charge of Pan Trinbago, not Pan Trinidad, not Pan Tobago, Pan Trinbago. So that association is the both islands. If you're looking to have a Tobago Carnival, I suppose Pan, being the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago, will be a very essential part of your Tobago Carnival. And the Pan Trinbago president here is speaking. Beverly Ramsey Moore has expressed concern with the marketing strategy of the inaugural Tobago Carnival. With 2 months to go before the October 28th to 30th festival begins, October 28th to 30th for those who are asking, Ramsey Moore said time is running out for the THA and the Tobago Carnival Committee to get it right. In a Facebook post on Saturday, Ramsey Moore criticized the decision to send a 10-member Tobago delegation to Grenada to promote the carnival, considering no schedule of events has been unveiled nor a budget. She said the promotion of the carnival locally is also woefully lacking. So she's saying that there's no schedule of events released yet, there isn't a budget released yet, there isn't any promotion locally yet, but we're paying $300,000 to send people over to Spice Mass to promote the carnival in Grenada. Chioke says, all you forget, what it just scrolled past my eyesight. All you forget what? What all you forget? All you forget the man retire and take his retirement money and still stay. I did not forget that. Not at all. I don't even know what you're talking. You don't know what you're talking about, Empress Roni? The leader of that party retired from the public service and was paid his gratuity. He took it, launched the PDP, and then continued working. Tobago Rail does overdo it, you know. Tobago participates in Panorama and even they have their own. Is October next year, not this year. Separate Panorama just for Tobago groups. $30,000. I don't know. I don't know how the cost was that. I don't know. I don't know the breakdown of the cost. It was probably a very expensive trip for some reason. Assistant Secretary of Tourism Megan Morrison, we know that on Friday, we know that. In a Facebook post, Ramsey Moore said, when you think you know and you really don't know. I find she was cold on this post though. This post hit a kind of low blow. When you think you know and you really don't know. That is the vibes I'm getting from Tobago Bakival Carnival or whatever they're having in October. Oh, jeez. Big rollout in Grenada and nothing I add. TNT have more people than Grenada. Dance I add before you dance abroad. Touché. Well said. Well said. Trinidad has more people than Grenada. Trinidad and Tobago has more people than Grenada. It makes more sense advertising locally first. I am 100% certain Tobago Carnival would be much more, what's the word? Used, much more utilized by Trinidadians than Grenadians. I am sure of it. I am sure of it. How are you in Grenada promoting it and Trinidad hasn't even had a promotion yet? Asked about her post on Sunday, Ramsey Moore said, I am not against the marketing and promotion all over the world of any event in Tobago. But I think as stakeholders, we are supposed to be brought up to date with what is happening. Where is the calendar of events? That's a good point. She is in charge of Pan Trinbago. pan teams need time to prepare. If you're looking to have a Tobago Carnival, and you're looking to have it in October. October isn't that far away. If you're looking to have pan events inside of your Tobago Carnival, how does Pan Trinbago not know when, if any, pan events are going to occur? And a lot of this has the feeling as if the PDP is trying to distance itself from Trinidad. As in, we don't need y'all. We are separate from Trinidad. We're doing our own thing. We don't want y'all involved in it. That's the feeling you get. They didn't want the bands over there either. She said the THA is not utilizing resources at its disposal and there's little buy-in from local stakeholders. What is wrong with having your very own National Carnival Commission assisting with marketing in Trinidad? And again, the NCC is the National Carnival Commission. National. National refers to Trinidad and Tobago. They're involved too. I am confused. You are out there marketing Tobago Carnival and not marketing in Trinidad and Tobago. You have not marketed in your country. TT has more people than Grenada. Trinidad is the mecca of Carnival. So if you want to sell a Carnival, where is the first place you'd go? That's actually a reasonable argument. That's a very reasonable argument to me. All over the world, Trinidad is basically recognized as the mecca of Carnival. Trinidad is the main carnival state. I was reading just today an interesting tidbit from a Barbadian who was supplying a bit of history of even the Barbadian Spice Mass. And their Spice Mass is actually a wholesale-based thing on the Trinidad Carnival because their Spice Mass, the original Spice Mass, was actually stopped. And then they restarted Spice Mass based off of Trinidad's Carnival. That's a Barbadian who said that. I'm not saying that's a Barbadian who said that. So it's well known that Trinidad Carnival is the blueprint for carnivals all over the world. So it makes sense generally, if that's the kind of thing that's the road you're going down, that at least Trinidad will be at the forefront of this. After all these years of Carnival, why are they going to Grenada to learn? What are they going to learn? I don't know. Trinbagonians already can't be in any leadership position in Tobago, so they want secession. I don't think they want secession. I don't think the majority, let me put it this way. I don't think the majority of Tobago wants secession. But you see, many people, many humans have this problem where many people would rather be the captain of a sinking ship than a worker, a sailor, a crewman on a ship running well. This is not to say that Trinidad and Tobago is running well. This is not a plus for any political party. It's just a human nature comment where many people would rather, I am in charge, but I am in charge, and let the whole thing crumble, but I am in charge, than actually just, let's work together and get this thing going. She believes time is running out. This is not handsy-pansy. This is serious business. I want to ensure that the Tobago Carnival is one of the best in the world. We must begin to sell that we, TT, start and end the carnival. NCC Chairman Winston Gypsy Peters agreed with Ramsey Moore that the carnival is not being promoted enough locally. That's the truth, he said. And it could nearly seem in this, like some people planning this and don't have the understanding of how difficult it could be to plan significant events. If any of you have ever planned any kind of significant event, you'd understand that there's a lot of logistics to go into this. These things don't just happen. When you see massive events go on and they go on successfully, lots and lots of planning goes into it. And to me, if you're doing something for the first time, it would make sense to look for the help of people who are accustomed doing it. I don't know, that would just seem reasonable to me. NCC boss hurt THA not asking for help in staging Tobago Carnival. National Carnival Commission Chairman Winston Gypsy Peters says he feels somewhat disheartened that the Tobago House of Assembly has failed to resume talks on the upcoming Tobago Carnival celebrations in October. Peters said on Monday that he remains in the dark over what is happening in Tobago for the inaugural event. Imagine this. Our nation is the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The National Carnival Commission has no idea about the carnival going on in part of our nation in the next 2 months. And bear in mind, when I'm speaking about these commissions and these different organizations, it's not just that these organizations are only there for corruption, because we know that there is some corruption. I'm not praising any of these organizations really and truly, but they have experience in this area. They have experience in this area. They know how to get in contact with artists. They know the promoter groups. They know the contractors, etc. They know how to do this thing. In a release issued on May 31st, the NCC said its officials met with Chief Secretary and Secretary of the Division. Yeah. Wow, that's a long list of secretaries. While Peters yesterday said that meeting was productive, he said he has not heard anything from THA officials since then. They have put their committee together without any input from us or anybody from NCC to do anything. But it is disconcerting. I mean, at the end of the day, I am the person who fought hard to make sure Tobago Carnival was as it is, and now this segregating, yeah, it's a bit disheartening. But I have a job to do, and I have to treat it as a professional. And I remember that. I listened to some of those call-in programs. I remember Gypsy earlier this year up and down the place talking about wanting a Tobago Carnival, for Tobago itself. Tobago should have a carnival. He was one pushing that. Good night, interesting. We must recall this isn't Tobago first hosting of Carnival. There was Tobago Fest. Tobago Fest isn't what they're aiming to host. They're saying it's a Tobago Carnival. If you're naming it as a Tobago Carnival, like, I mean, there's no problem if Tobago wants to host their cultural events. Tobago hosts many cultural events on their own. But in this case, you're literally calling it Carnival. You're understanding what I'm saying there? You're understanding what I'm saying there? It's like, let's see, it's like if I am a Hindu in Tobago and I wanted to start some Diwali Nagar celebrations in Tobago, wouldn't it make sense that I at least speak to some of the Hindu organizations that have been doing it for years? Especially if I want to call it the same name. How would I call it the same name and then cold shoulder all the people who are custom running it? And then we belong to the same country. What are we doing? It doesn't really add up to me. Oktoberfest was years ago. All of them people fired already. Oh, wow. Wow. Minority Leader, THA's Carnival marketing haphazard. THA Minority Leader Kelvin Morris has criticized the Division of Tourism. Morris slammed the division's 10-day promotional trip to Grenada. We know that. In an interview, Morris said he shared the concerns of Pan Trinbago president about their lack of information, incoherent planning, and the haphazard strategic direction of the Carnival Planning Committee with only 2 months remaining. Morris said he is confused by the promotional trip to Grenada, while stakeholders in Tobago are unaware of the calendar of events and the format of the carnival. It therefore begs the question, why are they marketing and to whom are they marketing it while in Grenada? Even more appalling is the isolation of our counterparts in Trinidad, where there is a market of 1.3 million carnival-loving population and a well-organized international brand identity of mass band soca artists and steel orchestras, whose following spreads far and wide across the globe. Roni says, I got word from a person in the know saying it is a mess. Well, it could seem like that. That doesn't seem to be much of a secret. Like, it would be a surprise more if it was well planned, and this is actually a technique they're using, you know. They're actually planning everything really down low. They're planning it down low, and they don't want to let all the secrets out of the bag quite yet. They're planning a massive event, and it's going to be a shocker to the world. When that Tobago Carnival touched the world, the shock it's going to put around the world is going to shake the whole culture of Carnival to its core. Bruce Wayne planning this out? I don't know. I am supposing that may be it. He said the promotion of the Carnival is necessary, but this trip was misplaced and ill-advised. Instead, he argues promotion in places with direct routes to Tobago should have ideally started after the committee launched the Carnival and announced the schedule, followed by aggressive promotion and marketing. Wait. I now take it. Wait. I now notice something as he said this. There are no direct flights from Grenada to Tobago anyhow. What? How is your first stop in promotion of an event to a small island that has no direct flights to you? How does that make sense? What? This campaign should have taken place in major source markets such as the United Kingdom, New York, where there is a direct flight out of JFK, and regionally in Barbados, where there is also a direct flight out of Sir Grantley Adams International Airport. Last week, Chief Secretary Farley Augustine said preliminary discussions have been held about a ferry service to Grenada. Now, listen, they could say this. They could say this. That you want a ferry trip from Grenada to Tobago. But how is that going to be done? How is that going to be done? Listen, I don't mind the idea, you know. I would like if I could have gone to Tobago, jump on a ferry and gone over to Grenada. I would like that. I don't mind that. But we need to understand that ferries are expensive to buy and they're expensive to run. Would the demand from Tobago to Grenada be able to pay for an inter-island ferry there? For an inter-island ferry there? Would the demand be able to pay for that? Or would this be another subsidized transport service? Are we talking about getting another subsidized ferry service from Tobago to Grenada? I heard, I'm not sure who it was spoke about this. One of the ministers spoke about it. And his reasoning was that if you want to do it, fine. But what you do is you decrease the obstacles and make it open for private businesses to do such. And I agree. Create the available legal framework for anyone who wants to do it privately. You could buy your ferry and start charging prices from Grenada to Tobago. And we will see if anyone in the private market wants to do that. If it's profitable, then someone in the private market will do it themselves. That's how you would run something like this. Otherwise, we are just going to create another subsidized service to be another burden on the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago, another burden on our treasury. Them fishermen does do it already. Well, exactly. If you make something legal like that, then maybe some of those bottomless boats that go out there, kind of illegal. I think it's more than kind of. Then some of those bottomless boats that go out there, maybe they would want to make that trip too. Make it something, make up the legal framework for them to legally register to make their own ferry service. But please, 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 please do not think that it would be a good idea to engage another national ferry service to be another leech on our treasury. That does not sound like a good idea. And I highly doubt, even if they are going to figure out a ferry service from Grenada to Tobago, I highly doubt that they would figure it out in the next 2 months. I mean, the Tobago Carnival is at the end of October. That's 2 months. Are we going to get a ferry service to Grenada in 2 months? What's up, Jeremy Francis? Morris also raised concerns about a letter allegedly written by the Spice Mass Corporation of Grenada to a Division of Tourism official proposing a carnival exchange, inviting Tobago Carnival committee members to Spice Mass and offering Tobago artists guest appearances at Grenada events. He said in terms of exposure, he would have liked to see, rather than a few artists on a trip, support for the production of music for all artists to help them reach global audiences. He said, nevertheless, he has no doubt that the carnival in October will be well attended because there's a natural appetite and demand as a result of the 2-year COVID lockdown. Who knows? But yes, there's trouble in Tobago. There's trouble brewing in Tobago. It's in October. Who said end of October? That's the date. 28th to 30th. We just read that. Tobago Halloween Mass. Yeah. There may be, I'm pretty sure there might be some Halloween parties, the way how it goes. And as it stands, these actions don't seem to point favorably towards the new Tobago House of Assembly being run by the PDP. It is not a favorable showing. I attend shows with them Tobago artists, and I just want to say thank goodness it was free. Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, Rooney. Oh gosh, don't do them that now. Don't do them that. Don't do them that. Don't do them that. But it obviously seems to be already starting off on a bad footing. Maybe they have time to recover, but the way they seem to be purposefully shunning help from Trinidad seems to be a bad idea to me. That seems to be a bad idea to me. Because Trinidad has been successfully running that carnival for many years. It seems sensible that if you want help running carnival, you take help from your fellow countrymen. And if you're looking, very likely, for the majority of the participants in that carnival to be coming from Trinidad, which very likely may be where they would be coming from, wouldn't it make sense to start hyping and promoting in Trinidad first? You all remember in I telling you, the pan man is a boss, the drummer is a boss, but them singers, oh geez, oh geez, oh geez. But I mean, Carnival does run in Tobago every year, though. That Carnival would be an offshoot, very likely, of the NCC. I hope they have a day work. I hope they have a day work. All right, that's all I have for now, folks. That today was Tobago Talk. That's the aim, you know. Wednesdays Tobago. That's the general aim. Adana is an amazing singing as well. That's the aim of Wednesdays Tobago. By the way, I will not be here for the Mindful Live tomorrow. I would not be here tomorrow. I'm going to take in some laugh on the Ave. I'm giving them some free promo, I guess. Some laugh on the Ave. I'm going to take it in. I'm not a comic. I'm going to just sit and take in some out there. You know, where would that be tomorrow? Woodford Cafe, I believe. Taking in some laugh on the Ave. I would not be here. You all heard me. You see, I'm saying it. No Mindful Live Thursday. No Mindful Live Thursday. I'll be here. I'll be here again Friday for the next Mindful Live at 9. Go live now. You know, that might be an idea. I may go live. I may. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see because I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. That might be a good idea. What's your views about WASA? About WASA in what sense? I'm not sure. That's a very wide question. That question is all encompassing. We could go another 5 hours talking about WASA. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean about the. I suppose if you're talking about the restructuring, I don't know how the restructuring is going to go, so I cannot mention if I like the restructuring or not. But I can say that the idea that they have over 500 managers and many of them are not useful because they can be fired and there's no effect on the water supply in the country, well, that tells something already about WASA, and it actually tells something about the country. I made a video about this before in a well, I don't really call them contemplations anymore, but I made a video talking about that, where you see the nature of Trinbagonians inside of this. If you as a Trinidadian would be willing to sit down in a managerial position, collecting money and doing nothing, and know you're doing nothing, well then, like, you kind of deserve to lose your job. Management and the government so-called send home management. And the government so-called send home. Well, I can't tell if it's so-called. All I can go is on the information being provided. And the information being provided, the information that has been provided for some time now, is the large amount of management in WASA. And come on, like, I find sometimes, but do you know that the facts are there are only about 45 managers in WASA? How am I to know? How am I to believe Nman45 on Instagram over the minister who announced this since last year? I believe they spoke about the WASA the number of WASA management, and something that I found really strange about that is I heard the union saying that there aren't that many managers. The union said that, but the strange thing is that number was released. Is it last year or year before? A long time now, that number about the that news about the high number of managers was released. And then only when the government decides to fire half of them, all of a sudden they're saying that's a lie, there aren't that many managers. Well, why didn't you say that's a lie when they first released the number a year and a half or however long ago? That seems kind of very convenient to me. It seems kind of very convenient. And if they aren't managers, who are all these people that are going to be fired? I mean, if you weren't a manager and you're fired from WASA, you're one of the 260 or how much ever being fired, and you weren't a manager, then it's very easy. You come out because there's social media. I will see the video, tag me in it by all means. You come out and you show me what your portfolio was. I was a worker here and they call me a manager and fire me. Well, you can prove that. That's not, I don't think that's something that would be hard to prove. If you were not a manager and they fired you calling you a manager, that's provable. I live in Dago and we ain't get water for 3 days. That ain't got nothing to do with the management. See, that's regular WASA woes. That's regular WASA. Exactly. So who they fire? If it's not the management, who are they firing? Like, and the annoying part in some of this to me, the part that kind of angers me, is that people attempt to pretend like we aren't Trinidadians. To pretend like we aren't Trinidadians and we aren't familiar with the Trinidad culture in and around a lot of these things. We know what goes on in WASA. I know men who work at WASA. We know this for years. We know WASA was similar to Petrotrin in the who you know in WASA could pull you into WASA and give you a safe work and good pay and you don't really have to do nothing, boy. We know this. So why do we pretend that it's not true when it's being said and we're saying we have to change it? All of a sudden, all the WASA workers remember that they're actually all essential needed workers that do a good job. Lala, I don't know why WASA is this quiet, and in real, you do have a point. I don't know. We know this for years. For years, everyone knows. Everyone knows this. And then when throats start to bust, when people start to be fired, all of a sudden, we're pretending like we didn't know how these companies ran. Like, oh gosh, we knew that. We knew that. We knew it was top heavy and they employ too many people, that many people in the ranks of WASA do no work. No work. There's a running joke about WASA. You go watch Wassa, you go watch Wassa men on a site, and you would see 20 people there and one man down in the hole doing something. And if they have to fire somebody, they fire the one man down in the hole. That's been a running joke about Wassa for years. For years. There are men at Wassa that will boast by me do no work in years, and running unlike the water. I mean, I don't doubt. Here's the thing. I don't doubt that the government has their own little negatives inside of all of this. No doubt from me about that. I don't doubt it. And the reality is, Wassa is the way it is because of governments. The governments created it like that. And if the governments are still the same kind of governments, then even if they fire everyone, they might just create a blank sheet for them to start back over doing the same thing. And that is a problem. I agree. It's the government that created it. So, yes, that might be a problem. But on the side of Wassa itself, let's not pretend like Wassa was some efficient, well-running company. We know not. We know it's not. So, all right. I hope you are educated, informed, or entertained. Again, I will not be here tomorrow night. I will not be here Thursday night for the Mindful Live tomorrow night. I will be here again Friday night for the next Mindful Live at 9 p.m. Usually 9 or 9:15. Usually. The live has been sponsored by the sponsors of the charts, Study Monkey and Associates over on Facebook, if you would like to check them out. And I will see you guys later. Don't forget the Discord. Yes, I was supposed to create that Discord. I will be on that. Peace out, folks. Laters.